was a more check-in session with all of you as a group, but also if there are individual questions um, specifically related to development of the proposition. So I would like to touch base on certain observations that I have. I would like to know your thoughts on those, as well as how you are thinking to develop this more strongly in terms of visuals and representation for the next phases. And the second part is to release the proposition 2, which is very much related to what you have been doing, but puts a little bit of a frame around all of your projects. So though the problems and issues you're working with individually are related but different, this gives a common goal to the studio and all of you to work on a proposal. So as we are beginning, I would like to let you know that I have graded all the assignments till now. And one of my observations in all of your cases, and I mean, I've encountered this before in graduate, happens in undergraduate studio, but it's more prominent in graduate studio or in any research-based class like this one. Research, design, and sustainability, the three core kind of tools we use for this class related to the objectives, is it's challenging, or students often find it difficult to connect the analysis and the research to proposals and visualizations. Or in other words, and actually I'm seeing that even here, that you all have very strong research analysis. You've identified very relevant problems and issues, and more or less you have analyzed them well, and which is reflected more or less in the grades. But also what I'm seeing is that the moment I'm asking you to speculate, take a position and then really act on it and create visualization and imagination of it. I don't know if it's a hesitation or confusion or less interest in the work. I'm seeing less development. And that's what I want for the first thing I want to talk about. And I mean, we're just starting into proposition, so I hope it gets better and stronger. But I want to address if there are certain questions you have, or there are certain issues you are facing, or there are certain things you want me to do that would help you in approaching the propositions. So I really want to have a clear and honest discussion about it. I don't feel obliged or obligated that if you're feeling something difficult or a certain problem, raise it now. I want it now rather than 2 weeks before end of the semester, so that I can tweak certain things or bring in more materials to share or work with you in groups and individually to do that. Okay, so I want to start by opening it up in terms of questions, clarifications, your observations, concerns.
Do you have any examples of sketches and diagrams people have done in the past regarding propositions?
I have some. I mean, some of them I already posted in Blackboard. The only difficulty is that I don't have representations or examples of a studio that exactly has worked on this topic per
Sure.
se. Some of the examples I have posted is from studio based on urban wilderness, but the framework has been slightly different.
I guess with what's posted already, it seemed very final, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I think what would specifically help me is if there was any type of development drawings, kind of at the same stage we are at now.
Okay, so then of process work.
Yeah.
You have to look at it from different studios. I don't have right away right now, but
Okay.
I will look at my archives. A good point.
I think something I've been struggling with is since I'm definitely a problem solver, I try to look like, I don't know, my work that I presented on Tuesday wasn't very futuristic or didn't really project out very far. And I think part of that is a struggle of being able to say, okay, this is what I see in 20 years, but my mind is constantly going, well, I don't know how that works. I don't know how the water would get from this point to this point. What technology would be available then? And like I jump to that step, and that kind of holds me back from really pushing the boundaries and designing into the future.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and that's a common challenge we all face whenever we ask somebody to speculate. And that's a good point also because I mean you're talking about the outcome visualization as a product, but also the details and kind of showing the process. And you talked about how it works, the issue of performance.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, the two phases to address that are kind of two forms of answer. One is, and that is the quick way to tell, or quick way to even for you to do is, at certain level, don't worry about the nitty-gritty details and the working and the performance, and just put out, put your ideas out, even if you think it's naive, even if you think that it's incorrect, and there is no strong grounding that it we know it will work or what it will be. And on first impression, it might be ridiculous or something very superficial or um, simplistic to some extent.
Hmm.
But it is important to do that because that would be the first step towards what you are asking or you are striving to do is to project a future or speculation that you can really show the details of how it works. Okay,
Okay.
because unless you put certain things out, put your ideas out, your imagination out, we won't be able to have a discussion on what things you may focus on or what things you can edit or what things you can eliminate, and we cannot have that dialogue. So that's the first step, and you need to do that.
Hmm.
You have to trust your instincts. You have to be um, you cannot be afraid of a failure. Okay, I mean
Okay.
otherwise if we only keep in mind technology and how it works exactly today and current practice, we will be bounded by that form and that organization principles.
Hmm.
Okay, so when the stage we are in at this point, I would just put big ideas out there and then figure out how it works. And how it works or how it could work won't be up in the thin air, but it will be based on understanding of the cycles and the systems, which are not just about present, but it has a long history to it.
Hmm.
Cycles and principles of how water works and water flows, or how plants function, or human body works, or other animals or other species work. I mean, I can argue that in the current practice, we actually ignore them. So actually, in a lot of cases, it might be actually about going back to the history and finding principles and represent it in the future.
Hmm.
Okay. So for example, if you look at Paulo Soleri's work, which was one of your source, the principles he's using, like passive solar and thermal mass and using the sun, this is not a futuristic technology or futuristic, even the form he's creating is not futuristic. But the context he's working on, the scale he is working on, some of the forms he's generating using certain elements and how he uses that form, that makes it futuristic. So it could be a work with very traditional system and traditional materials, but how, where, and in what way it is applied could be about very speculative.
Hmm.
Okay. Other comments, questions?
Well, I guess my problem was, although I try to stay true to what we've discussed previous to me actually doing the assignment, I was, looking into electrification as a problem. But when it came to actually doing the project, I realized that that problem is not, I couldn't identify that problem locally. I could identify elements that would contribute to that problem somewhere else. So I had sort of like a block for 3-4 days that I basically didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And then I sort of start looking again and just looking at the map around me and the things that I was familiar with and that I knew every day. I started retracing my project and try to. I mean, it made sense to me as I was laying it out. I did not have the time to have the visual feel for that because I
Yeah,
spent so much
I
time
think it's
not
a similar kind of problem that Eric was talking about. I mean, in terms of the process, you cannot assume that you will have all the information and exactly you will find the issue in elaborate form of expression in your immediate local context. And that's why sometimes you have to take the issue and analyze it and actually start working on it visually, irrespective of site or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost decontextualize it. And the other thing is that, and especially it's relevant in an online class and also in kind of on-campus classes, that I mean, if you are blocked out and something, I mean, you need to let me know. I mean, immediately. I mean, if you think about eutrophication, I mean, yes, we probably don't see right away large lakes being completely taken over by algae or plants.
Yeah,
But if you I mean, even do a simple Google search, you will find that, I mean, that's a huge problem in the Great Lakes.
yeah.
So probably it has not come to the surface that all the Great Lakes have become kind of occupied or taken over. But
I found out about that actually. I just couldn't connect that to my location. Other
yeah,
than
yeah, I mean, your location, I mean, you have to look at it a little broadly. Again, I mean, that's the systematic idea. I mean, you cannot just restrict to say Canton or one neighborhood in Ann Arbor. And even if you do that, and for example, my suburban neighborhood or subdivision, I mean, we have some natural smaller lakes within our subdivision, and eutrophication is a huge problem because a lot of invasive species have started to grow and kind of kill the whole natural water collection and water mitigation system. So I mean, I think it's a problem. It's probably not visible at a scale you are thinking, or kind of it's in your head. So I mean, I mean, sometimes you have to just, even if it is not there, I mean, do it. Uh, and go for it. Or if it's a block, I mean, quickly brainstorm with either with your colleagues or with me, so that we can quickly get to a direction.
Right. Well, that was the reason. Like, I don't know, the way it made sense to me because you eutrophication is, caused by runoff from parking lots and roads partially. So part of my solution was, if we take care of these surfaces that pollute our waters locally, then this water will not go any further. It will just get treated locally. And that's why I
True,
was.
but unfortunately, I mean, your proposal, I mean, if I remember from the last proposal, I mean, it was lot, the context that you were showing were all natural green, and the thing that really came to the fore and was prominent were those towers and the housing. It, right now you were saying about the surfaces,
Hmm.
but the visuals you showed had nothing to do with surfaces.
Yeah,
It was a different project.
right. Well, like I said, I really lacked at the visual, putting my ideas in visual form, because hopefully it would have been more clear, what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think in your case, I mean, you have to, I mean, which is not a bad quality. It's good that you always connect one thing to another and it casts a wider net. But you also have to learn to kind of focus on, and if the surface is the problem, let's say parking lot, or you're talking about parking lots and roads.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge problem in cities, in suburbs, in the whole region. But I mean, in that case, say that that's the problem I'm working on, and I'm going to investigate and reimagine these surfaces and how these surfaces could become a place of urban wilderness and could become a more sensitive environment that is not insensitive to water runoff.
Hmm.
And then the project could become, how do you design parking lot, or what happens to these parking lots?
Okay.
I mean, one thing you have to do, I mean, you cannot do is, when in each step, when you face a block, you cannot go back and start from scratch and find a different approach. And then no approach will get developed.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not saying you are doing exactly that, but that's the danger.
Yeah.
Others, Steve R, John.
Yeah, my issue came up in that I basically feel I lost focus on where I was going and ended up following a tangent that took me way away from my original focus. So
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, refocus. I mean, you
yeah,
were working on, I think, reclamation, right? I mean, bring
yep.
that to the fore. And um, I think one thing, I think it's a good segue, but I would like to see if John has anything.
Yeah, I wrote basically a whole little summary of how I was going to change my project. I don't know if you actually want me to go through that here or.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, why don't you, I mean, give a quick synopsis? I mean, today we
Okay.
may not have time to go over in
Okay. I
detail.
mean, basically, I'm going to do pretty much a redesign. I'll just some of the basic concepts I'll keep, but I'm basically scrapping most of what was there. I'm going to fully document the area with a photo study, of course, like we discussed. And I have the images. I just didn't show any of that stuff. But I'm going to start to relate that to the site. You talked about maintaining the roads as they are, so that kind of changes my thoughts on a lot of things. So I have ideas about bridging over existing roads and how that can kind of become part of the landfill, not landfill, but the dumping, or so maybe that works together. I'm also going to reduce the size of my project because that was my thing. I spent a lot of time, and so I was covering 16 blocks. So I'm just going to basically just do a swatch, like 1 block deep, wide, and then maybe like 4 blocks deep. And then I kind of lost the raccoons a lot, so I'm going to really kind of focus that back in, and I'm thinking that my community of homes will actually be combined with the raccoon homes. Cause like I did a ton of research on raccoons, and I know all about their habitat. I know all this stuff, but it didn't really show in any of my work. So I'm thinking like my outer shell of my house could be somewhat the raccoon home or something, and I'll come up with different systems that can benefit both human and raccoons, and maybe things that the humans do will directly benefit the raccoons, and vice versa if I can figure out a way for the raccoons to benefit the humans.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think we should talk more in detail on Tuesday, but I mean,
okay.
quickly, a couple of things. And I think you're spot on in talking about bringing the raccoons to
And then
the
my
kind of
my only
more
question
central.
is, oh, sorry.
Yeah, good, good.
Uh, so I think I got the habitat part of it down, and the dumping part. I need to do a lot more research in how bioremediation actually really works in specific species, and get more detailed, show a lot more, kind of display how the systems work. And my only question is, does this, I was going to combine the farming and the storefront to be one kind of piece, but my question is, it's more of a human element, and do I even want to go there? Do I keep pressing on the whole storefront farming concept? I mean, there could be some benefits to raccoons, but it's really a human element. Do I want to abandon that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would like to see the formal outcome of it.
Yeah,
I mean, in your case, I mean, you have to think, and that's why I think there is a danger of just looking at one block to your
yeah,
first kind of idea of completely refocusing into one block. Because when you talk about systems and a lot of the things you're talking about, it's difficult to achieve everything in a block. So
yeah.
I
I was going to go 1 block
the
wide
area
and
you
just
were looking
four
at,
blocks.
yeah, I mean, the area you were looking at was fine as a neighborhood.
Okay,
Now you don't have to redesign in exact detail the whole 16 blocks,
okay,
but within that 16 block area, you can show maybe 3, 4 instances, and those could be 1 block or 2 block areas to
gotcha,
manifest certain implementation strategies or certain visualizations. But as a
gotcha.
system, I think a neighborhood, a larger area would be okay.
Okay, good, good.
Um,
Thank you. That
yeah, a
clears
couple
that up.
couple of things you also said, I think, and that's I think for all to understand. Um, One is, I mean, the idea of the systems. I mean, that all of you have really need to nail it down. That within your problem or the issue you're working on, whether it's water, whether it's biodiversity, whether it's reclamation of abandoned properties, whether it's water runoff or water filtration and eutrophication, whether it's human remnants, whatever they are, and each of you, 6 of you, have 6 clear issues and 6 problems. You have to nail down what are the prominent cycles, natural and human cycles involved in it. You have to know them in and out. And there might be 20 cycles involved in your issue, but you need to know in and out and analyze them completely, at least 3, like the assignment told you, 3 humans and 3 natural. And when I say in and out, that means what, how these systems work, what are the elements and parts and steps of these cycles, how are they interconnected, um, and how can you visualize them? And when I say you have to know in and out, it's also the part of it is you need to represent the cycles visually within your context. So if I'm working on water in a specific street system, whether it's plan, section, neighborhood plans, axonometrics, using these tools, I'm not just representing the street and the buildings and the landscape, but I'm actually think about using these tools. You are representing the cycles and each and every element of it. And this is a huge part because most of these cycles are not visible, or parts of these cycles are not visible in the same way as our buildings and our gardens show up. And that's a challenging job, but that's also an opportunity for you to make these things visible and bring it to attention to for your audience. Okay, and I will try to gather some more examples, whether it's from past studios or from some professional work, whether it's diagrams, image, drawings, and I will highlight some of these points that I am making. All right. So before I discuss the next phase of the proposition assignment, which is essentially what you're doing, but using a framework, one general thing I want to mention and make it clear that when you're working in this kind of research-based studio, if you're doing a thesis or you're doing this kind of advanced design studios, you have to keep in mind 3 or 4 things. And each of these elements I'm mentioning, I've designed assignments for you to think through that. First is through the problems you're identifying and relating and then breaking it down. What you are doing is, and it's often most challenging, is through a very specific problem, you are relating to or connecting to a larger discourse. And this discourse, through this discourse, you are bringing in a lot of complex problems or wicked problems to the domain of architecture, and which is very critical and important, but not easy to do, because a lot of the things you are dealing in and you are working with are not in the traditional domain of architecture. Whether it's understanding dumping or how water works or how life of raccoon is, to what is biodiversity and how we can maximize it. These are not traditional architectural subjects. We don't teach about these to you in architectural schools. And that's why, I mean, it's a research-based studio, because you have to go outside the traditional silos and boxes and understand these to some extent. But it's also an opportunity to relate architectural elements and the things that we all are more familiar with and redefine them as a stronger cultural and societal tool through which we can at least attempt to address some of these complex problems. So that's a matter of discourse. Second is, and this is where you have to be very rigorous and systematic, that this studio is about very specific methodology, and it is based on the ecological approach and the typological approach, understanding cycles and systems, and keeping in mind that every element is part of a larger system, and every element also is made up of many other elements. And at each and every step, and at each and every scale you're working on, whether it's a material scale, or it's a scale of an object or a body or a large district or a neighborhood, there are always these elements that you are part of, and also smaller elements within each, that you have to understand. You have to understand their structure, their form, and their organization, how they relate to one another. And that's a core of this project, to understand them, analyze them, and make them visual. And I'm probably repeating them in a kind of second point in this, but it's very important. I mean, if you don't grasp the workings and the performance of these elements and the cycles, then you're not giving yourself resources to develop the propositions. The third we have already talked about in relation to some of your concerns and questions is that of the speculation. I mean, I don't want a speculation that we already see in that exact form and how it works. I mean, how nature is imagined today, I mean, it is at its kind of last leg. And we have to rethink how we imagine nature, how we define green, how we look at what is wild, and how we think about ecology in the context of a city. The expression, the aesthetics, the value systems have to be completely redefined. And that's why I'm emphasizing on the speculative piece. That's why I'm emphasizing on the possible future idea. Now, the possible future could come from past. Possible future could come from present elements, but completely reworking them. Possible future could come from reframing the current values, or taking an existing element and completely reusing it in a different way. Okay. So, I mean, keep in mind these three things: the discourse, the method, and the speculation. And in each case, it becomes important that you keep a grasp of the cycles and the elements and their relationship. More you understand them clearly, more you will be able to manipulate them and use them. Any questions so far? All right. Okay, so if you go to Blackboard under modules, I have
Do we lose them?
I have put
Oh,
a
there.
week 7. Okay, and also in the assignment there is a handout that you can look at, and it's not anything huge change or any new requirements. You'll be working on the same requirement and the format. One change in terms of requirement is I'm bringing back the graphic novel. So the main deliverable for the proposition 2 that you will submit and you will be juried and reviewed upon will be, one is the graphic novel, 18 to 24 spreads, and second is the 5-minute video. And for both of these, actually not for the video, you're welcome to show the work in progress video, but the graphic novel work in progress along with individual drawings, 2D, 3D, as well as 3D artifacts, models. I would like to do a kind of draft review on October 14th, and then the final graphic novel along with the final video will be due on October 21st. Both are Tuesdays. Okay. So essentially, this assignment, the fifth assignment's focus is on visualization, and it will build on, of course, your identification, documentation, analysis, and your imagination in terms of the proposition. But the focus or the framework that I am putting is through the lens of your problem and through the lens of the cycles that you've identified, both natural and human. You have to design a habitat, an imagination and visualization for a future habitat for certain species. And when I'm saying species, species as plural, which could include humans. Okay. And if we look at the definition of habitat, it's essentially an ecological and environmental area for inhabitation. So inhabitation, social occupation, thinking about human-nature relationship or species-nature relationship, however you define the species and nature, become important. The habitat that I'm asking you to design should be in an urban context that you have identified through your field trip. It could be at different scales or any one of them, from a scale of one abandoned industry to that of a neighborhood, to a system of vacant properties, to a transportation route, to a lake or a forest. But the goal is, within this context, you have to reimagine and illustrate the functioning, performance, the growth, development, and sustenance of a habitat. So how certain species, plural, I emphasize, live and sustain themselves through issues of biodiversity, through resilience, fitness, reclamation, what kind of complex issues they face, how are these complexities organized among themselves, how can we use some of these natural elements like land or water, or even other natural elements like wind, as a spatial currency of design, for could be transaction, for use and reuse and material transfer. So the focus remains the same: urban wilderness, cities and natural process, human-nature relationship. But you really need to now think about the proposition as a very specific habitat. Now, the form of the habitat, how the habitat works, how it is structured, what is its aesthetics, how it relates to different microclimates or microhabitats within it, what are the species or who you are bringing in within that habitat or habitats, that's up to you. And that's up to your narrative, right? But the narrative should be about really illustrating a projective ecology, if we use that term, for a habitat. So for the proposition 2 due on October 21st, I want you to use any media. I want you to and encourage you to continue working in full-scale 2D and 3D both physical and digital strategies and representation modes, including drawings, photos, diagramming, traditional architectural visualizations like plans, sections, perspectives, axons, non-traditional techniques like collage, photo montage, videos, traditional making models, physical as well as virtual, use finding objects or creating artifacts, installations. So explore these different media, but then bring it back to two forms. One is the video, a 5-minute video using your phone or any other video device to summarize your proposition. And second, the graphic novel that should capture and illustrate the whole narrative of this imagination and construction of the habitat. I shouldn't say just construction, imagination of an habitat. I mean, that could be construction, that could be sustenance, that could be destruction of habitat. You should give a title for your project, and probably all of you have done that at some stage of the graphic novel, so that it's clear. You should name it. What is it about? What is the habitat? Who is it for? And what happens in the habitat? And that should be captured in the graphic novel. Okay, so that's the project you will be working on for the rest of the semester. The starting point, or the first proposition visualization will be due on October 21st as the midterm. Okay. Quick comments or questions about it?
Is this supposed to build on the first proposition too?
Yeah, it should build on proposition 1.
Yeah.
But it should also take into account the critique and the comments and the discussions we have had regarding proposition 1.
Okay.
So proposition 1 should be edited. Proposition 1 should be much more developed. Proposition 1 needs a lot of refocus in many of your cases.
Okay.
It should not be starting from scratch. It should not go back and find a new problem or analyze it. You should use all the materials you have so far from the first 3 assignments. 4th assignment was proposition 1, and this is just a development of it.
Oh, another question I would have, not only that it's built on the previous assignments, but we're supposed to use what has already been presented again, reiterated and redeveloped?
Yes, but what you have done in the first 3 assignment is, none of it is the proposition.
Right,
so you can, yes, you should bring those elements in. Otherwise, why did we work on those for so long? But they need to be expressed in speculative representations in your specific context, which we have not. So there will be new materials that you will present,
right,
and using which you will illustrate how you imagine the habitat for whatever species you are designing, how the habitat will be, how it will work, how it looks like, what are the values and priorities embedded in it, what is its structure, what is its volume, what is its organization.
Yeah. All right, that was like, I was thinking it's not just a continuation of what we already did, it's an intertwining, like, I don't know, maybe I'm not asking correctly.
Yeah, I don't know. The bottom line is the first three assignments gave you materials and resources
Okay.
based on which you should speculate and illustrate a possible design of a habitat. You took, all of you took a first stab in. I'm just asking you to develop that. All right. So if there is no other question, go over the assignment handout more carefully. If you have further questions or confusion, let me know. Next Tuesday, it's a work in progress discussion. I would like to meet as a group uh, and see where you are. And I do expect to see some work in progress outcomes in terms of 2D and 3D outcomes and in different media. So, it's a discussion, but it's not just talking. So I would like to have the discussion using your work. Um, I'm not putting any definite number of pages or number of drawings or certain number in terms of spreads of graphic novel. Tuesday, I would say I don't expect to see graphic novel right away, but I would like to definitely discuss using your work on a more full scale 2D and 3D representations. Okay. And in the meantime, I will work on gathering some more specific examples of kind of in the process work or diagrams that explain speculation but may not be in a final stage. And I'll share it with you Tuesday, and I do plan to kind of also do a lecture maybe on short one on Thursday. So I'll let you know based on what I am able to gather. All right.
Okay.
All right. So I'll see you on Tuesday. Work on the proposition, and I am looking forward to a good discussion on Tuesday based on a good amount of work in progress.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
You too. Bye.